And we'll get going. Before we get going with the program, I'd like to say a few things. This is my last meeting as president of the Laguna Beach Historical Society. It's been a lot of fun, been a lot of work too. And the pandemic didn't help us as it didn't help many other groups and all. But we've got some stuff done still, and our memberships are up, and we're happy. If you do not have a copy of our current newsletter, there's some on the table out there you can take for yourself or for somebody else. I guess I don't know, we gave out all the Cracker Jack already or not? So there's some Cracker Jack for the band who wrote "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" is not the band we're going to hear tonight. The band who wrote "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" passed away in 1959. So that's a long time ago. He wrote that "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." His name was, I always forget his name, Jack Norworth. He was the first honorary president of the Little League. But he was, he started in 52, I believe it was. And so he wasn't around for too much longer after that. In 59 he passed away. So anyway, I'd like to thank all of you for the 8 years I've been president-elect and president. So many of you have been so helpful, not only as members and volunteers, but as people who are support us, and we appreciate that. It's been a tough time going through the pandemic, but I think we're still alive and well. And we have election of officers on Saturday, so we'll be moving on. Our speaker tonight is Frank Aronoff. He's kind of like Mr. Youth Sports in Laguna Beach. He's an 8th generation native Californian. He was raised in Menlo Park and moved to Laguna in 1988. His wife was a Laguna girl, went to Laguna Beach High School, and so they came back here. He worked in college athletics over 15 years, and for the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles in the area of boxing. Locally, he got involved with Laguna Beach High School athletics after the 1993 fire to help reconstruct the athletic records that were lost in the tragedy. Many of the records were lost. At the same time, the local papers needed help covering the various high school athletic teams, and Frank filled the void, providing write-ups initially for the Coastline, and then since 2003, the Indy, or the Independent. Frank serves as the official scorekeeper for the Sunset, Orange Coast, and Golden West high school leagues, and has compiled record books for many of the Laguna Beach teams. He even knows my son, who happens to coach in high school. So he knows a lot about not only the Little League, but a lot of sports, youth sports here in Laguna Beach. He still works as a licensed health insurance agent and mortgage broker when he's not covering Laguna sports, youth sports. Will you welcome, please, Frank Aronoff?
Hopefully this won't be too boring, and it's my first time doing a talk on Little League. First, to set the scene, Little League started in 1939 in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and the idea was to provide baseball played following the real baseball rules, but on a reduced size diamond that made it possible for kids 8 to 12 years old to play the game, because they obviously didn't have the speed or the arm strength to play on a full-size diamond. And so they started the program in Williamsport, obviously derailed by World War II. And after the war, the league started to expand beyond Williamsport, beyond Pennsylvania. And the big change took place in '49 when it was publicized nationally, both on the newsreels in the movie theaters as well as in national magazines. And that started the big expansion of the Little League program. In 1952, the Optimist Club in Laguna Beach had heard about Little League from one of their members, which was Jack Norworth. And he had moved to Laguna and had been an optimist up in the LA area. And Santa Monica had been the first Southern California city to have a Little League team, and they started in '51. So off of that, Jack kind of talked it up with the board down here, and the Optimist Club decided that, that's what they needed to do, is to set up Little League for the Laguna Beach kids. quickly got organized in 1952. The Optimist Club took the leadership. They, after doing the research from the Santa Monica program, they organized a meeting in early March with the other service clubs in Laguna to get an idea of trying to get some teams sponsored and set up the league in Laguna. They found out that Little League required they file their application by the 1st of April in order to be an official Little League program for 1952, even though they weren't going to be playing until that summer. So on Wednesday, March 5th, the Optimists called a meeting of all the service clubs in Laguna, formed a board, and got the Optimist Club all ready to sponsor, and they got Kiwanis to agree to sponsor a team. By sponsorship, they had to come up with the uniforms, the balls, setting up the whole program, because to make it into a real baseball-like experience for the kids. Within another week, they were able to get the Rotary and the Lions Club to agree to sponsor teams for the first year. They were going to have 4 teams. And the next thing in the month of April, they announced the first managers for the 4 teams, which is going to be Gordon Strachan for the Optimists, Don Johnson for the Lions, Howard Saunders for Rotary, and eventually they got Ken McDonald to take the Kiwanis Club team. Johnson, who was the Optimist manager, had played Major League Baseball for the Chicago Cubs, who was a member of the 1945 World Series team. So definitely interested in baseball and getting it going in Laguna. The application was finally put together, and they submitted it on March 24th, just making the deadline. And there's a copy of the original application.
Wow.
And you can see up there, 1952. They got it in there, date stamped, and Laguna Beach had Little League. Yeah?
Hey, Frank, sorry to interrupt you. I didn't see the 13 people. I did not see Norworth on that original group, so he wasn't really part of the original 13, nor is he on this document either, right?
He was a member of the Optimist Club that did the research on bringing it here. No, he's not a member of the organizing committee.
Right.
What they did is they decided to make Jack the honorary chairman of the thing because of his notoriety with baseball.
Gotcha.
And the fact that he was part of the original team that did the research on bringing Little League to Laguna from Santa Monica.
Right.
So they got the application in. Then during the month of April of 1952, they ran clinics in town, and obviously using peer pressure to get the kids to participate. Remember, Laguna Beach at the time was a very small town. The high school only had about 400 students, so you can imagine the elementary school, which was, they had 2 at the time. They had El Moro, which was actually had just relocated up to El Moro from the old site where the swimming pool is, and they had Aliso for the South Laguna Park. So just with the 2 elementary schools and the one in the high school with barely 400 students, so it's a very small program. So in order to make Little League successful, they had to get all the kids to want to buy into it and participate.
It's interesting, the 4 top figures there, they're all from South Laguna, whether that's just a coincidence or maybe that's where Jack Norworth lived. I don't know.
No, Jack Norworth lived on Coast Highway. The building's still there.
Oh, the Romaris, right where Romaris was?
Yes, that's where he lived.
But they're all from South Laguna, it looks like.
Yeah. So anyway, so they got the application in, and in the month of May, they held the first draft. Obviously, the managers were able to assess the talent based on the tryouts. They held the first player draft, and they formed the first 4 teams. The first practice game, they went up to Santa Monica and played the Santa Monica Little League. The Kiwanis team lost 5-4, but the Optimists got shellacked 7-0. The following day, they decided to have the first parade to open up the Little League season. The field for the first year, they used the high school varsity field, which was located on Short Street, where the end of the current football field is located. They ran the first opening day ceremony. They did a parade. They started at Coast Highway and Broadway, and they went to Beach, then to Forest, to Glen Erie, then to Park Avenue, up to Short Street, made the right turn to the high school field, which is there at the end of Short Street where the field end zone is right now. That was the baseball field. And the first games were played. Let's see what the next slide is. And at the end of the season, they selected an all-star team. Now, the all-star team, just so you know, with the way Little League was formatted, the league, you run your season, you pick an all-star team, and that all-star team then enters a playoff with the other leagues in your area, with the eventual final champions going to Williamsport for the Little League World Series, like it does today. And so this is the first team. This is the first all-star team, and
one of the people in the photo is in this room, as I understand it, correct?
well, I don't know. I'm going to read off who's in there. I thought I had.
Yeah, he's right over there.
For me to see if we can read it right before.
Which one are you?
No.
Oh, which one are you, Jim?
Okay.
Okay.
Fourth from the
The
left.
tall guy.
The tall guy.
Tall guy. Pitcher,
So
right?
the front row,
Yeah, he's early.
starting from the left to the right, the front row, Mike Wright is the far left in front. Then Pete Bergen, Bert Gabriel, and Roger Johnson. Then in the middle row is Steve Dye, Bobby Payton, Abe Johnson, and Leslie Cox. Then in the back row is Kent Peterson, Steve Ramsey, Mark McManus, James Lyon, and Jimmy McMillan. Now what's interesting is how did Little League affect Laguna Beach High School's baseball program a few years later? It made a big difference. Steve Dye, middle on the far left, was a first-team All-League player in the Orange League for 57 and 58. Mark McManus, which is in the back row, and he's number 3 in, he ended up being All-League in 1959 for Laguna Beach High School. But Steve Ramsey, the big kid, second one in on the back row, was a 3-time first-team All-Orange League player in Laguna Beach High School's first All-CIF selection in baseball. So, and this is a program that had no success until these years. So Little League had a tremendous effect on the sports program at Laguna Beach High School.
What was so surprising and telling about this is the presence of the young black kid. That was very reassuring at that time because there weren't many black families living in town.
Well, that's true, but we had quite a few that were big part of the local sports scene. You had the Olivers, who participated in football and volleyball. You had John Pitts, who was
Eli's brother.
and John was a first-round NFL draft choice out of Arizona State.
Okay.
The Olivers, Clarence played at San Diego State and ended up playing in the NFL for Don Coryell for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay.
So, and then obviously Dane Blanton played Little League for Laguna Beach and won a gold medal in the Olympics for beach volleyball. Is the head coach for the beach team for USC right now and won back-to-back national championships. So that was our first All-Star team. They ended up losing to San Diego in the first year of the All-Stars, but the second year, our All-Star team ended up beating Escondido in the first round before losing, I think, to an El Cajon team in the second round, which was pretty remarkable, being a small town where the kids were all spending their time at the beach. So here's the opening day parade, which was a big thing, where we had the opening day parade. They ran that every year, and here's when Jack was alive. The big deal was passing out Cracker Jacks to the kids.
Who's the lady in the convertible?
That's his wife.
58 Chevy.
And when Jack died in '59, she continued the tradition of passing out the Cracker Jacks all during the 1960s.
When did it end?
I don't know when the last time they ran the parade.
Or the hand out of the Cracker Jack thing?
Maybe we could save some of these comments till the end and questions.
Yeah, exactly. 1953, in 1953, they were able to add 2 more teams to Little League. In 1954, they expanded to 8 teams, which they were able to carry into the late 90s. And during the 50s and 60s, they had covers. They had a simple format where they had a cover drawn by, credited to Alexander Ott. His dad had a lot to do with the design. And this was the program that covered it that you saw for all through the 50s and early 60s. And inside, here's 1954, this is what it looked like on the inside, where you had the rosters of the team with all the players' names, and I brought some examples that we can show afterwards so you can see them close up. And this was a big deal for the program. And so it was extremely popular. Games were held on the high school grounds. The Little League field was eventually constructed at the end of the old football field, which ran parallel to St. Anne's. And if you know where the current high school baseball field is, home plate would be now where the outfield is. And that was the field used by Little League until 1962. In 1958, Jack persuaded Cracker Jacks to donate a trophy that originally Jack was hoping to be given to the most valuable player of Laguna Beach Little League. But Little League regulations prevented it from being given to a player, or recognizing a player. And the president of the National Little League organization, P.J. McGovern, recommended that we give it to the city champion, whoever wins the playoff between the American League and National League, as the winner of the Jack Norwood Trophy. And so that tradition started in 1958. And what they backdated all the previous champions to 1952 on with the winner of the Jack Norwood Trophy. And those winners, the records were kept of which teams won the title all those years. Now, what was interesting about the way the Little League was structured prior to 2005 is when a manager drafted a player, they were a member of that team for their entire Little League career. Teams weren't redrafted after every year. You stayed with the team. Many managers stayed a manager for many years, and they developed their talent, developed the kids, and they felt invested in their players that they had drafted, and wanted to make sure they had a great baseball experience playing baseball the way the big leagues play it. In 1958, like I said, that's when Jack got the trophy. That was also the first year that Skipper Carrillo volunteered to work with Little League and became the third base umpire for all the Little League games. And the next thing is the field. 1962. The high school decided they were going to rebuild all the high school athletic fields. That's when Geyer Field was built. They reoriented the football field from being a parallel to St. Anne's to its current configuration. The baseball diamond for the high school was moved to the end of the old football field, where it's located now, but home plate was at the other end. In fact, what they did is they took the home plate from Little League, became the home plate for the high school field. Obviously, it was going to be full-size dimensions, but to save money, they also made the old Little League dugouts the high school dugouts. And so the high school field was used the old Little League format, except for the baselines, until the field was rebuilt in 2004. So what was Little League going to do? And that's where Mayor Riddle came in and spearheaded to get a full site developed for a baseball field. And during the year that it was being built, originally the Little League was going to go and use El Moro for their play field, but the high school took El Moro. So Little League was left out. But the Irvine Company came through and allowed the National League, those 4 teams, to use Irvine Company property in the canyon, which is what we call the Act 5 lot. And that was turned into a baseball field for 1 year. Now, home runs would be hit out to Laguna Canyon Road. Remember, in 1962, there was nothing out Laguna Canyon. So you didn't have to worry about traffic. There was nothing to go to. My wife used to say, did you ever go out Laguna Canyon as a kid? She said, no, because there was nothing out there. There was no reason to try out Laguna Canyon. So for 1 year they did that while the Bow Canyon field was being built. They still used it for some of the Little League games, even though it was still under construction. Now it's 1962, so So after that, they continued playing Little League at Bow Canyon, which they still do today. And an example of the stars that played on Little League. Here's Dusty Dvorak, who was on the 1969 Lions team, and he was later the 1984 Olympic captain for the men's volleyball team that won the gold medal. So the important thing with Little League is they got every athlete that lived in the community to play Little League. So they were, even being a small town with not a lot of kids, they were able to field 8 teams, and they didn't have competition to get kids interested in other sports. This was the big thing in the community. And so we're talking about from the 50s, the 60s, into the 70s. Little League, every kid was on Little League. And because of the fact these teams were drafted, when you became a member of a team, there was a legacy of all the other kids that had been members of that team, and you felt like you were part of a special club. The 1971, the Little League combined their program into one league of 8 teams. They originally, in 1954, split into 2 leagues of 4 teams each. That allowed, by having 2 separate leagues, allowed them to have 2 separate all-star teams. So instead of only 10 kids getting that opportunity, they were able to have 2 teams. Well, they went back to a single team all-star. And again, by this point, Orange County was really urbanizing. There were a lot of leagues forming in South Orange County. There were teams everywhere. And so we went back to 8 teams in one league in 1971. The national rules changed in 1974 that allowed girls to play Little League. And Laguna was right after that. Girls were able to play. In fact, in 1983, the first home run was hit by a girl at Riddle Field. Julie Brown has that distinction as the first home run hitter. Happened to be the same year that Mayor Riddle died. And he was honored in the Laguna Beach program that year. The fact that it was in honor of Jesse Riddle, 100 years old.
Wow.
So in the late 80s, early 90s, the decline of Little League began. There was a lot of different factors that affected the participation levels in Little League. There was more competitive club sports that kids who wanted to play at a more competitive level could go to. The local league downgraded the rules. So while other Little Leagues were playing regular baseball rules, Laguna modified their rules. And the result was they started to lose kids that were very athletic that wanted to play regular baseball, and so they left to go play club ball over the hill. In 1997, they dropped having non-parent managers manage the teams, and by 1998 that affected, and the enrollment, and they had to eliminate one of the 8 teams. And in 1999, the decline continued. They dropped another team. They were down to 6. In 2005, they were down to 5 teams, and they eliminated the title team format and ended the system that had been in place since 1952. Among the people that volunteered to help Little League over the years, there were some managers and people who really worked hard to create the sports program that they had. Jim Jones was a manager for Rotary for many, many years, and a couple of other teams. He managed from 1974 to 1994, came back for 3 more years, 97 through 99. John Kirby was a manager from 1978 to 97. And then another real dedicated volunteer was John Strokamp. He was an umpire, a manager, and a coach for over 26 seasons until he retired in 2000. And 2 of the Laguna Beach players made it to the major leagues. Damon Berryhill, a 1975-76 All-Star for the Kiwanis team, had a pretty good career for the Chicago Cubs and Atlanta Braves. And Michael Brady, who was a 1998 A.G. Edwards player, and when the team folded, he was transferred to the VFW in 1999. Like Berryhill, was a 2-time All-Star and made an appearance a few seasons as a pitcher in the major leagues. So it's, for a couple of kids, their dreams were fulfilled. And that kind of gives you a quick rundown, and I know there are questions, and rather than meandering into a lot of different subjects, I figured find out what you guys are interested in, and let's see if I can answer them.
I'm gonna use a mic, that way we'll catch it on our
Sure.
film. Comments or questions? Does anybody have anything?
Frank, I saw the name Jeff Greeno. Do you know him? I see him a
Oh,
lot.
yeah, I've known Jeff since he
you know
was
him.
15
Yeah,
years
I've
old.
seen him post a lot on the social media about Laguna and sports, so I didn't know. We see a lot of names that are familiar out there.
Oh, exactly. And the thing is, we go back to the old programs. You'll notice a lot of people with connections, again, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and really into the 90s. Little League involved this community. And there were people who were, you can just go down the list of who's who of Laguna that at some point in time was the manager of the team, coached the team,
And that,
was involved. I mean, from Bob Whalen to Kerry Hayden. There are
a lot of familiar
Mark
names.
Christie's dad was a manager for many years. It goes, like I said, it was a who's
One
who of
name that
Laguna.
was familiar to me was Bill Sharp when you brought up and I didn't
Okay.
know I would see that
Hey,
name,
Bill.
and he's here, so maybe I'll pass it to him and he can kind of say where I saw
I'll tell you
it.
something funny about Berryhill if you want to hear it.
Sure.
My first year as a coach in the first draft, first of all, Lynn was Berryhill's first grade teacher.
Okay.
And I'll never forget when I went to that first draft, she said, Bill, I don't care how many tryouts you've been to, you got first try. Take Berryhill. But I needed a home run hitter. I had nothing but bad hitters, not bad.
And
I
Berryhill
had
ended
good
up
hitters.
being the extra point kicker for the football team in high school.
So what do? I come home and I said, nah, I didn't pick him. And of course, he went in the first round. I didn't take him as a 9-year-old. I went ahead and took a 12-year-old that was moving in because I wanted the strength of the hitting. Boy, did I make a mistake. And somebody's let me know about it now every year since.
Well, I was going to say, as a manager, you understood how that title team format went, and the idea of being able to develop your talent, and when you make a commitment to a kid, you're going to stay with him and want him to be a player to help you in the future.
Yeah, right then. You got to take it's for the team. That's it.
My name's Halsey Williams, and I played on the Optimist from 58 to 62. Matter of fact, there's on that one chart, it showed Bill and Al beating the Optimist in 62, and I was the losing pitcher. I remember it well. The American League against the National League, and those National League kids were from They were the tougher kids in town. They whooped us good. And they were the better all-stars too, but it was a lot of fun and the greatest memories. I played Riddle Field on my last year when I was 12, and that was a great first year there, and it was fun. And my question is, do they have any records of that I could find? I'd love to see who was on those teams back in those days.
Oh, rosters, I've got most of the programs from the 50s and 60s and 70s, so.
I'd love to see if I can find that 62 when I was 12 years old and I had my best year ever as a Little Leaguer. And it was thank you, Riddle Field, for being a lefty and having that short fence there. I got a few home runs.
What's funny is when I look at old rosters and I see names of people on the teams, I mean, we're talking about like from the 50s and 60s, and then I know them in their 60s and 70s, I'm thinking, it's hard to believe some of these people were on the same team back then as little kids.
Yeah.
And how their lives have evolved over the years. And it was quite an interesting part of Laguna life when the town was small and before there was a there over the hill in the Saddleback Valley.
Well, in '58, when I started, the year before, at 7 years old, I wanted to be a Little Leaguer so bad I tried out. And they said, you're too young, but there's a Pee Wee League.
Right.
Which was really exciting because I got to start there.
City Rec ran the minors for the Laguna Beach Little League until 1988 or 89. And Little League was strictly this program for the 8 to 12-year-olds, majors, these 8 teams. And the City Rec came through and provided the alternate baseball for the kids that didn't have the skill level and for the younger kids just to learn baseball. And Little League took the program over from City Rec in 1980, I think beginning in 89. And then the real little program, which is T-ball, was run by the Boys Club until it was eventually taken over by the Little League program.
Anybody have a question I can give you mic to?
You can ask them.
Roger, anybody?
Is he gonna see you tomorrow on the pickleball court?
Yes, Mike.
He's still pretty damn in. Halsey, did you ever meet Jack Norworth? You remember as a kid?
Who?
Jack Norworth, who, as I understand,
No,
Frank, he planted the seed, but there were others that really kind of implemented the idea of Little League baseball.
Now, if you
He
want
planted
somebody
the seed.
that knew Jack Norwood as a kid, is Dr. Mark Judy.
Oh, yeah.
He used to run errands for Jack, and his dad got him to help Jack out, and he would go to Jack's apartment and had a couple of, had some nice little stories about, meeting Jack as a little kid and interacting with him in the late 50s. So if you want to talk to somebody that remembers him well, talk to Mark Judy.
Thanks for the lead. So I've been in touch with Mark too. One other question. Riddle sounds like he had much more of a role in terms of actually the field location. He really got his fingernails dirty and really did lead the way. Is that a fair
Oh, yes,
statement?
there's no question. I think, championed getting that field developed for Little League when they were bounced out of the high school. And that was a big thing to develop the Boat Canyon Park for Little League, so they had a home. And that's been, I think, a big part of every little kid's dream when they're playing other baseball and they get to go to finally that they make it on a team to play at Riddle because it's like a real ballpark.
Beautiful new field. No, got a question? Anyone else?
If you were on a team, we'd love to hear from you if you haven't spoken yet.
Remember in 1962 when Riddle Field was built, there weren't any homes overlooking Riddle Field. None of that existed. Riddle was there before there were houses. So anybody that built around that area, they knew Riddle was already there. Just like the high school.
Yeah, Jay Andrus. I was on the Lions team in 1953, 54.
Okay.
And I pitched a no-hitter against Ray Al's. And I walked everyone. But we went to the All-Stars, and I was on the All-Star team down in San Diego. We won the first game, as you pointed out.
Oh, that beat the Escondido team?
Yeah. And then we lost the next one. Yeah, those are good memories. That's neat. I enjoyed seeing their pictures and seeing, I knew everyone on the team because they were, if you started 53, I would have known everyone.
I have at least a Xerox of the 53 program out there. So you can take a look at it and look at the rosters.
Good, that would be neat, yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bob Worthwick. My two sons played Little League in the 80s. One for Pottery Shack and one for Jim Jones and what was that, Rotary, I guess.
Was it Rotary or was he was at A.G. Edwards before that?
No, this was Rotary. But anyway, the anecdote here is my older son Scott. He was a reporter for the local paper in town in the late 80s and was writing up stories about sports. And so he was able to get a press pass to go into Dodger Stadium dugout when Damon Berryhill was here because, he used of course, the story that he was Laguna Beach High School and so forth. So I have a story if you want to, a newspaper story if you want to see that Damon and my son in the Dodger dugout. And I think it was late 80s or something like that. It was when Damon broke into the majors. I think it was
that photo would be, that's something that should be in whatever collection we end up putting together for the Historical Society on Little League. That should be a part of that. Now, in terms of the names of these teams over the years, like I said, there were originally 4 teams that were later expanded to 8 teams. The original 4 were Lions, Kiwanis, Optimists, and Rotary. Now, Rotary stayed Rotary throughout the entire title team period until that ended in 2005. Optimists later became Pottery Shack, then it was Grubb and Ellis, Gina's Pizza for 1 year, and then became known as the American Legion team until the end of the title team Little League program. Kiwanis changed to Surf and Sport in 1991, and that team folded at the end of the 97 season. And the original Lions Club team was Lions Club until 1984, then it became Butch's Sports, which became then American First Capital Bank, then American Plumbing, then it was sponsored by Surf and Sport, and then the name was changed to VFW for its last year when the original VFW team folded. The 2 teams added in 53 were VFW, which stayed that till the team disbanded after the 2003 season, and Laguna Federal. And Laguna Federal eventually became Laguna Bank, then it was Laguna Lumber, and then it was taken over by Sports World. If you remember Sports World on Broadway. The Elks team and Ray and Al's were the last 2 teams started. Ray and Al's was the predecessor sporting goods store to Sports World. And it started as Ray and Al's, and it became Bill and Al's, and then it became known as Sports World beginning in the 1966 season. And then after Sports World stopped sponsoring the team, in 75 became Bill Thomas. Remember Bill Thomas Camera. And then after that, it was taken over by Nolan Real Estate, and then A.G. Edwards. The Elks team was the other one of the last teams added. And Elks later became Beach Construction, then it was known as Hobie Sports from 85 until the end of the title team period. Now, some of the team names still exist in Little League, but the teams are all reformed every year. So it's not like it was from 52 until 2004, when a player was drafted on a team, that was his team for his entire Little League career, as the players that are here today will attest to.
Yeah, actually, when you mentioned that, I think Nolan was my younger son's team with Jim Jones, as I recall.
Yes, that's what he was on. Before Jim became the Rotary manager, he was Nolan and A.G. Edwards, and then it became A.G. Edwards.
Well, one other brief thing I wanted to mention is, I'm sorry I got here late, I don't know if you might have mentioned this already, but Arnold Hango, that just died in Laguna, was 99, and he was a nationally famous baseball writer, and his papers are in the Hall of Fame right now. So anyway, he lived in Laguna from the mid-50s, and when he came here, he was a Little League coach also. And I think he was with them in the minors because he
Must have been the minors. I've got a list of all the managers.
he liked the underdogs, he used to say. So anyway, I'm working on a plaque to put at Riddle Field for Arnold and Jack to sort of so people would remember their contributions.
Yeah, he wasn't involved, when he was involved with the minors, it wasn't run by Little League, that was through the city rec.
Right.
He was not a manager during at all during.
Yeah, well, I guess not officially for Little League, but he managed baseball for kids back in those days. Thank you.
Just looking at some of the names.
So
That's something, if you'd like to, I've got the list of all the managers over the years, and take a look at that. I think you'd find it interesting, some of the names of people in the community that were managers in Little League. I'm just thinking of some of the... Jay Grant was a manager, besides Bob Whalen, let's see, any other? Marty Kruger, who was a dentist in town. Let's see, Mark Stansberry. Doug Rao, who was famous for the Laguna Playhouse as an actor. He was a Little League
I
manager.
think his son was quite a hitter too.
Quite a hitter. Set the home run record.
Right.
Ended up at Oregon State his senior year and made it to the College World Series.
Yeah, he may have done some very close home run records, what I heard.
Well, the home run record, Rao broke the record that was held, actually at that time, the home run record was held by Liz Bellany, who ended up being a great volleyball player for the high school. And Liz had the record that was eventually broken by Bill Rao when he became, in the 90s as a Little League player. Another one of the early managers was Dr. Tom Judy, Mark Judy's father. Jim Schmitz, who was a contractor, was a manager for many years. And obviously no one can outdo Jim Jones. And Jim Jones was legendary in his 20 years as a manager in Laguna Beach Little League. Anything else?
I would just like to say that Skip was the greatest. I mean, if you remember anybody in Little League, it was Skip.
Yeah, there you go.
And the great thing is, he would make a call, and it was animated. You're out like that, and do it just like a professional, umpire or for the majors. And the parents would question the call. They'd say, "He was safe, Skip. He was safe." And their kids, to this day, all the kids go, "Skip called him out. He was out." Never argued with Skip.
Skipper stayed involved doing Little League
Yeah.
through about 1988, 89. And after that, he pretty much stayed with the high school team. In fact, this year, the high school team, it was a big deal when Skipper showed up and was in the dugout for a game. It was like inspirational.
Yeah.
When he would come to the high school. He'll be 84 on July 17th this summer.
Yeah, you don't see him walking down the failure like he used to, but
No.
that was great.
But
See
it
him in his, whatever uniform he was wearing,
That's what it
that's
was.
where the home run day came out,
Exactly, and that's what it was like when he showed up for the high school game. I think they were playing Newport Harbor, and it was inspirational
Yeah.
for the kids to have Skipper there in the dugout,
Yeah, he was a legend.
just like the old Skipper.
So in 1958, how old was Skipper when you were playing? He was old, like what age was Skipper in 1958?
He's 84, I'm 72, so he's 12 years older than I was.
Yeah,
So he's
he'll be 84
So he's
Yeah.
July
20.
17th.
And he was just a wonderful person, what a great personality. And the kids would never question his calls. The parents, they wanted to win so damn bad. He was safe. Like, no, I was out.
I'll tell you, don't think anything
They
is by
always
Skipper. He is
recognize
the most
every
perceptive
single person
individual.
he
Oh, he still remembers me.
He still, and he'll ask about your kid.
Yeah.
We won't get this on the
Any other
recording if you
questions,
don't
any
have
other
like.
comments,
And I'll tell you,
questions?
Skipper is the most
Remembered everybody.
upbeat individual.
Yeah.
I think that's what
Never
makes
missed a name.
Yeah.
him so special to the sports teams.
Do we have any other questions or comments from any of you and our speaker?
No, but great job.
And we've got to turn this
If you want to add anything to this program, as far as contributing any information, we can put it together in the package for Little League history. You can email Laguna Beach Historical Society. There is a pamphlet outside that says Murphy Smith Building, I think it's something like that out there. It has our email address on it, which is Laguna Beach History, or info@lagunabeachhistory.com, or .org, excuse me. Don't take my word for it, take a brochure.
That runs right into, if you haven't been to the bungalow recently, that is our headquarters, museum, the bungalow, all that, it is between Wells Fargo Bank, which used to be Laguna Federal at one time,
Laguna Federal.
and Whole Foods. It's between those two places. It's the only bungalow I know of that's downtown that's still a house.
And I've got all these Little League records that hopefully someday go high space that I can.
Yeah, well, we're ready to.
We're thinking about the July exhibit, we're trying to do a July exhibit.
Okay, I didn't know exactly what. Yeah, so you can go and we'll have the exhibit up in July. Hopefully you can come down if you haven't been there and see that one. Right now in that room, there's a Rotary exhibit from its 90th year, but its 90th year is up. The Rotary is now 91. So
I've
that
got some great old programs, and I've got the baseball card of Michael Brady, and I'll get the one with David Berry. I'll find that one, and I think all that stuff should be on display.
yeah, we'll put it on display and hopefully have it up by July. And we hope you all come there and visit, not just for that. It does change. Our displays change.
What's that?
Except during the pandemic, they didn't change.
Last time I knew the trophy existed in 2004, 2005. Why has it disappeared? No, I would assume Little League still has it. But,
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Your memory is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We
This is
appreciate
great to
it.
get together.
I would encourage you, if you're not a member of the Historical Society, to become a member of the Historical Society. Get a box of Cracker Jack if you haven't done that yet, and then to talk amongst yourselves or to talk with Frank.
yeah, I was going to say, I was going to get those old programs out if people wanted to look at it.
Oh, okay. So you can go in the back and see that. He's got a lot of things back there.
Yeah.
Is there anything else for the good of the Historical Society group here? Thank you all for coming, and I sure learned a lot, and I'm sure many of you did too. Thank you.